Okay, this is lesson 2-4A, which is the second part of this section, which is dividing rational numbers. So I have some steps that I created or put down here for you to take a look at, and I would suggest that you write these down. This is really the same thing as, you're going to do the exact same thing as multiplication, but this time you're just going to do the rules of division. So before, when you were multiplying fractions, you multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, after you turn them all into fractions, and then worry about the sign of the integer after you're done. You're going to do the same thing now, except that you have one more step you have to do in there. So the first thing you have to do, just like we did before with multiplying, you have to turn all numbers into fractions. Okay, not a problem. You should know how to do that. The second thing you have to do is you have to use the multiplicative inverse property. The multiplicative inverse property says that when you multiply a fraction by its inverse or its reciprocal, you get the same, or you get the value of 1. So if I have 1/2 and I multiply that times the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2 over 1, I end up with 2 over 2, which equals 1. Ooh, sorry. So because it is that way, because what it equals, that's part of the identity property in these algebraic properties, and that's what makes it allows you to be able to do that. Okay, so this next step is not challenging. This turn all of them, it's the same thing. It's this step right here that is your new. It's the new step in this section compared to the last section, multiplying. So then after you do that, you're going to follow over here. I jumped over here. You're going to follow the rules of multiplying fractions and integers, and then you're going to multiply. Jeez, I keep hitting that. Multiply numerator times numerator. What's going on here? There we go. Multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. And then you end up, then you have to simplify, and then you have to apply the proper sign. Okay, so if you look at this first example they did for you, we're going to do it together, okay, as well. And I'm going to kind of write it over here. So if you look, you have a -5 1/5 divided by 2 1/3. So you have to turn these mixed numbers into not so improper fractions or common fractions. So 5 times 5 is, again, we did this in the last section. If you have 5 1/5, and I have 5 wholes, that's 5 over 5, because 5 over 5 is a whole. Our denominator determines our whole, remember, from the Cuisenaire rods. 5 over 5 plus 5 over 5 plus 5 over, if I kept doing that 5 times, I get 25. Okay, because I have a whole number 5. 5 times 5 is 25. Now, I then have to add my 1/5 to that. So it's 5 times 5 is 25 plus 1 is 26. So you end up with a negative, because you can't skip the negative, 26 over 5. And you're going to divide that by that fraction as a common fraction. So you have to take 3 times 2 and then add 1. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So it's 7 over 3. All right, now, right now you've done step 1. Now you have to do step 2. You have to turn this division problem into a multiplication problem by using the multiplicative inverse. So the -26 over 5 stays -26 over 5, but it becomes times, and then right here you're going to take the reciprocal of 7/3, so that then becomes 3 over 7. And then you just multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, and you can simplify if it's possible. It really isn't possible here. So you're going to multiply 26 times 3, and 26 times 3 is 78 over 5 times 7 is 35. So I've got 78 over 35. Now the problem you have to remember, you have to go back here and you have to look. You have a negative and you have a positive over here. Negative times a positive means that this answer is going to be negative. So you can't forget that sign. Just if you either bring it over or you have to make sure you go back and look at it. Okay, so that is step 2 and then step 3. So now, and 4 actually, and now we're on step 5, which is simplify. So we have to simplify that. We have to figure out how many times 35, can go into 72, or 78, sorry, that's an 8, 78. And the answer is 2 times, so it's -2. And then you have 8 left over, 8 over 35. So that's how you would multiply integers, okay? Or divide and then eventually multiply. And then you should go back and think about, is that reasonable? So that you're not having an answer that is completely off and not able to even be possible. Okay, so then let's look at, let's do number 1 down here together. I think I want to do number 1 here together. And these should be in your notebook for your notes. Okay, so you have a negative 6/5 divided by a negative 1/2. So I'm going to write it right here. Negative 6. There we go. Negative 6/5 divided by negative 1/2. Okay, so we already have fractions. We already have common fractions. So all we have to do, we can jump right to step 2. So step 2 says, okay, you need to turn this into a multiplication problem by doing the multiplicative inverse. So you negative 6 over 5 stays negative 6 over 5, but it becomes times, and the reciprocal of negative 1/2 is a negative 2 over 1. Okay, and then you multiply. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. 6 times 2 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5. It's negative times negative, so the answer is positive. But that's not simplified. You have to figure out how many times this 5 can go into that 12. Well, 5 can go into 12 2 times. 5 times 2 is 10. I'm left over with 2 over 5. And that would be your answer. Okay? Okay. Then I think I am done with I think I'm done with dividing. Come on. I think that I am done with dividing. Yeah, I'm pretty much. Because this is what we did this before in the last section for multiplying. Okay, let's look at the next page. Let's see if there's something here that I want to maybe go through with you. Just to see if maybe there's a problem. No, I don't think so. Know that when you have a whole number, like this problem right here, that just gets put over 1. When you have decimals, you can just use a calculator, so that shouldn't be too difficult. And when you have 3 numbers, make sure you do them in order, from left to right. Okay, multiply, divide, left to right. Okay, then I think we're done.